All right, so we are joined by the pastor of Relevant Empowerment Church in Jackson, owner of Tony Yarber Martial Arts, and the former mayor of the city of Jackson, former Jackson City Councilman Tony Yarber. We thank you so much for joining us today. We have talked about the government career cluster here in our ninth grade class, and I've got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School, and we are recording this for our friends at Rosa Scott, Ridgeland High School, and Germantown High School. So thank you again so much for joining us today.
It's my privilege. I appreciate being asked.
Now, we got a lot to talk about in your career in politics, but before we get to that, I think it's important for them to understand where you came from. Graduate of Forest Hill High School and then went to the University of Southern Mississippi.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm originally from Jackson, South Jackson boy, and I think the biggest part of my time has been in the city of Jackson. I went away to school, of course, but the bulk of my time has been in the city of Jackson. I am let's see how to say it. I'm a lover of my city, but I'm also very realistic about the situation that our city is in as well.
Yeah, and then before you got involved in politics, you were a teacher and a principal in Jackson Public School.
Yep. Did all of that. I'm doing consulting now. I'm still working with students every day. I'm a math coach, and so I'm in a school almost every day of the week somewhere around the state.
That's awesome, and obviously you had great experience in that. But obviously, what we really wanted to hit on today was your career in local politics, because I tell these young people all the time, no matter what city you live in, your city politics, your state and county politics are so important. And in my opinion, even more so than your federal politics if you live in Mississippi, because that's the people that affect your everyday life. Now, you were the Jackson City Council person for Ward 6 for a few years. So talk a little bit about that experience, what all a city council person handles, what all you would have to oversee, how those meetings went, and some of the things you dealt with on an everyday basis.
Sure. Let me first start by saying I'm wearing this cap because I'm getting married tomorrow and I can't get my hair cut until in the morning. So I'm looking like Wolfman Jack. And it's not my fault. Okay. So I just want to put that out
congratulations. You got a great reaction on that in the class, by the way.
I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. But city council, I became a city council person almost on accident. I was working on campaign of Marshawn Chrysler, who was running for mayor, I think in 2009, 2008, 2009. And he was vacating his seat. So in a mayor council form of government, which basically means that the mayor is the executive, the city council, they are the legislative branch, and the balance of power work between the two of them. Okay. And so he could not run for the executive branch and also serve in the legislative branch, because how can you check yourself, right? So he had to vacate his seat, which meant that was an open seat to run in, and I kind of got tapped. What I didn't realize was how the city government was made up. And that's why I brought that up earlier when I said mayor council form of government. Some of the areas that we live in, you may have an alderman form, a mayor alderman form of government. And where the mayor and the alderman basically share power in a sense, in a mayor alderman form of government, and the mayor has a vote, can vote as a part of what the aldermen do. In Jackson, in the city, in city council, the mayor doesn't get a vote. And so I quickly had to sharpen up on my Robert's Rules of Orders. Robert's Rules of Orders is the etiquette, or it is the order that drives how you do meetings. It's what keeps meetings afloat and functioning. I may be getting ahead of myself, but there's a Robert's Rule of Order issue right now that the city council and the mayor are battling it out in the Supreme Court. And that Robert's rule, that point of order, has to do with a mayor being able to veto a no vote. So I wanted to bring that up because it gives you an opportunity to see how the mayor and the council, how they work in a mayor council form of government, and how the powers are divided.
Yeah, and in that time on your city council, you were the Ward 6 is part of South Jackson, so you had to take concerns from the citizens to the city council because you were basically their voice when it came to issues of the city.
Yep, yep. So you're basically the representative for that area, and your responsibility is to be sure that those areas, that you're the voice, and that those concerns from that area are heard.
Yeah, and then after a few years of that, our mayor Chukwueze Lumumba passed away, and we had a special election in
Yep.
2015, which you were victorious and became the mayor of the city of Jackson, which I cannot say I envy in any way as far as a job, as far as responsibility. But you were the mayor for 3 years, and you handled a lot. And I think it's important for these young people to understand. And you did mention about how the mayor and the city council work together. The mayor is the executive of the city in most cities. But they don't just make decisions and boom, this is how it is. You had to supervise a lot of employees. You had to supervise a lot of departments. You had to give guidance to those employees, and then you had to work with the city council and the Hinds County supervisor. So you dealt with a lot. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, because it must have been a quite interesting time.
When you're the mayor of any city, big or small, your responsibilities go from you still have those responsibilities to hear what citizens are saying. You also have the responsibility of attempting to negotiate and recruit and market, whether they're deals. One of the biggest things that we did was try to get Costco in the city of Jackson. And so you had to deal with a lot of different agencies. As mayor, you want to attempt to get both state and federal funding. And so you got to deal with the governor. You've got to deal with the Speaker of the House. You got to deal with senators and the federal delegation. So those responsibilities are broad and they're vast. And when you're the mayor, almost always when the city gets sued, you're going to get sued. So you've got another responsibility to attempt to shoulder the weight of those things, while also being sure that that weight is being distributed across, and that you're not the only person trying to get things done. You got to delegate that.
Yeah, and you did a great job of that and you've said it since, you tried to tell everyone about the water crisis years ago. And obviously your background is not in water engineering, but you still had to supervise that, because when it comes to a city department, ultimately you are the executive. So we won't get into the current water crisis, but when it was going on when you were mayor, I know you had a lot of appearances on the media speaking about it. Even though you weren't the expert, how were you supervising that department and their employees?
Well, I did a wonderful thing, and that is when you don't know, you go out and you find somebody who does. And so we hired an amazing public works director. And what she said to me was, when she came, she said, "My job is to make you the water mayor." And she did that. She ensured that I became a member of the National Water Council. She ensured that I became a part of the water committee on the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I was in sessions. So to answer your question, we knew that if we were going to be successful in dealing with this, that everybody needed to understand our problem.
Yep.
And so we made it our business to invest in learning, understanding, and attempting to do things based on that learning and understanding.
Yeah, and along with that, the public works is obviously a huge department. But what are some other areas that you oversaw and supervised? Because obviously every city, whether it's Madison, Clinton, Biloxi, Jackson, they all have several departments with several employees. So what are some of those other careers that you oversaw and learned more about as mayor?
Well, I look at the mayor's office, government, public service. I look at government as what is government's job? What's the basic job of government? The basic job of government is to provide for the safety and the health and welfare of an area. That's it. So in other words, police and fire, all right, water and sewer, okay, and any other issue that deals with safety and health. And so I wanted to be sure, because we were in Jackson, that we dealt with the crime issue, and that was huge. And I was not. I hired a great chief who also took the time to listen to me, even though I wasn't, law enforcement. But I understand what's being said. I know what constituents are talking about, and so we implemented things that allowed us to decrease the crime rate by 15% in Jackson. That allowed us to decrease, every year that we were in office, decrease the murder rate. And we had gotten down to, I think, about 50 murders, 52 murders our last year. And so those are the things that we oversaw, that in my mind are the actual essential functions of what government provides. A lot of people say, well, what about schools? Well, government doesn't provide schools. Government provides the opportunity for school to happen.
There you go. Absolutely. Now, one thing you've talked about is how you dealt with other agencies, and how you had to communicate, you had to listen. And I think it's important for these young people to realize, whether they go into government or not, you've got to be a great communicator, and you've got to be a good teammate. Because one thing about you that I've always loved, just watching you from as a viewer, and what I've heard from people in the government from Hinds County and Jackson, is that you're a member of the Democratic Party. But I've heard people that were white Republicans say, man, Mayor Yarber is so easy to work with. He always listened to me. His heart said, he's got a great heart, and, I can really talk to him about stuff. And I think that's so important when it comes to any type of government being run.
Yeah. So, hey, family, I know that y'all are probably in homes where CNN and Fox and what's the other, MSNBC, those things are on all the time. And it just seems like the world is on fire, and adults are fighting about Trump. And can I tell y'all something? That junk ain't real, okay? What's real are water and sewer issues. Absolutely. What's real are potholes. What's real is keeping people from coming in schools and threatening y'all's safety. That's real. That mess that y'all see on TV and the Trump this and all that, that's not one day affected any of your lives. It has Absolutely. Not affected anything in your lives. And so Absolutely. I approached my colleagues, whether they were Republican or Democrat, from this position. Here's what we all want. We all want our children to be safe and to get an amazing education. Black, white, Indian, it doesn't matter. We all want to make sure that water we're drinking is safe, and that we're cleaning wastewater and returning it into the rivers and tributaries that we pull from safely. So we know we want to be able to have all of those things that I talked about, a high quality of life. We got all those things in common, and it's in our best interest to try to see how we can work together to make that happen. Now, I hadn't said anything yet that if you put a black man and a white man in a room beside each other and you ask them, hey, what do you want for your children? I bet you $850 million that they're going to say the same thing.
Absolutely.
And so that was always my approach to dealing with politics.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more because you're never going to agree with somebody on every single issue. But at the end of the day, everybody wants the same goal. And I also agree 100%. And if you're from Mississippi, no matter what area you live in, whether you live in the richest part of Madison County or the poorest part of Jackson, I've never remembered a president in my lifetime that came here other than a campaign or a disaster. So the state and I want all these young people to realize I don't give a crap who you vote for, but the local and state and county politics are so important. And that's a good segue. We have an election coming up on November 8th for the midterm elections. And even though most of the people seeing this are not going to be old enough to vote, they need to be aware of what's going on, because these local elections, these judges, these city council members, school board members, this is what affects your life. And then when we have the state election, the city of Jackson has the election in 2025, and then the state is in 2023, I believe. I get my year. Yeah, the state would be the next governor and state election would be in 2023. The city of Jackson would be in 2025. But that is so important for these young people to be educated and make a good choice, because you've been a teacher, I'm a teacher. I have never in my life told a student who to vote for, and I never will. But
Right.
it's very important that they get out there and use their voice, especially these females and these minorities, because it's not always been that way.
That's right.
Medgar Evers was killed for Black people to have the right to vote. Susan B. Anthony lost everything in her life for women to have the right to vote. So it's very important that every single person gets out there and has their voice heard, because when it comes to running a city, maybe things would be different if everybody was out and voted.
I'm going to suggest, and this will make sense when you guys start actually voting, and maybe your teachers are even, because elections are coming up, the midterms, maybe you guys could pull up a sample ballot for them and talk to them about the ballot. But if you get an opportunity to look at a ballot, here's my suggestion all the time. Start at the bottom and go up.
Wow.
Because what happens is your state and local election, particularly during this cycle, voting election cycle, you're going to see all of those big names at the top. You're going to see who's running, Michael Guest and all these other folks. You'll see their names. And then at the bottom or on the back, you'll see stuff like election commissioner and I'm just throwing some things out. And they're typically listed by what we consider to be how big the office is.
Yeah.
But what people don't understand is that it's the tax assessor who determines what the tax and the value of a property, and that is huge.
Absolutely.
This one person who you just go and you don't even know if this guy has a background in real estate. You don't know if this lady has, but you just gonna check their name, right? And so you leave tax and property valuations to the guy who, and no shade to Papa John's, but the guy who drove delivery for Papa John's.
Yep.
So it's important, family, that you vote from the bottom up, because while we consider, and let me just give you a contrast really quickly. So everybody that you hear all the time, you hear those names, whether it's Governor Reed, whether it's Michael Guest, Donald Trump, Joe Biden. Can I tell y'all something? None of those people do work. All those people do is go to meetings and hear, and then they talk to other people, and other people do the work. Guess who the other people are? They're the people at the bottom of the ballot and on the back of the ballot. Those are the people who do the work. Those are the brains behind the glitz and the glamour of a 30-second soundbite. So I just wanted to say that to highlight what my brother is saying to y'all.
Yeah, and that also, and the people doing the work are the people that are hired by those people, because like you said, you hired a great public works director and police chief and the police officers. They're the ones out there that are actually doing the legwork every day. But before we get to the students' questions, we got to talk about you are a pastor, Relevant Empowerment Church out there on Northside Drive, right before you get to Clinton. So just talk a little bit about that and how that's really affected the community, because you've done a lot of great work out there.
Yeah, wow. Well, real quickly, Relevant Empowerment Church was actually birthed from, I wanted to do an outreach ministry, and we called it Relevant Ministries. And over time, maybe about 8 years, and a friend of mine wanted to do this Sunday young adult service, and we were calling it Fat Church, PHAT, not pretty hot and tempting, prayer, healing, accountability, and teaching. And it became a church plant somehow. And eventually we changed the name to Relevant Empowerment Church, and been serving out in Northwest Jackson for last 12 years now.
Wow. Yeah, and I know some of the members of your congregation, and they're just, they can't say enough great things about your church. So I need to get out and visit soon. But I do have some questions from the students, and these are all ninth graders. This first one is Donovan Smith, and he asked, "What did you like most about being the mayor?"
Meeting Fantasia. No, no, honestly, earlier we talked about the local politics and where things actually get done. I really like that as mayor, I could make decisions that could impact people's lives almost immediately. Like if a family called and they live in a cul-de-sac and they suspect drugs and stuff for being, I can call the chief of police and say, hey, I need you to go out there and fix that,
Cool.
and that can happen. So I mean that really was uh, it was satisfying for me to be able to do that as mayor.
That's awesome. Yeah, and as thankless as the job is, there's got to be a lot of rewards to it, because it's
Yeah,
going
yeah.
to be one of the most thankless jobs in the world. But being able to affect people's lives is great. This is Kaylee Luckett. She's one of our cheerleaders here, and she asked, "Why do you think a government career is so important?"
Kaylee, a functional government is how you're able to get on the bus or get in the car, get on roads that aren't crumbling underneath you. A functioning government is how you make sure that the water you're drinking isn't contaminated. A functioning government makes sure that when the toilet flushes, that we know where it's going and we know that it's clean when it once it goes through its processes.
Yeah.
And without a functioning government, a strong functioning government, we literally live um, in a place of where it's unsanitary. We live in a place where it's unsafe, because what government does, government helps to establish law, enforce law, so that ensures that we live in a place of law and order.
Yeah.
And law and order, even though bad things still happen, it says that if it happens and you do it, we're coming to get you. And here are the punishments for doing that.
Yeah, now this is an interesting question. This is Kentrell Charleston, and he asked, even though you fell into the seat by accident, what ultimately convinced you to run for the Ward 6 seat?
Um, Peer pressure. No. Uh, Okay, so I'm a pastor, so you'll be able to follow me with this one. The night that they tapped me and said, "Hey, you're gonna run for this," I actually told them, I said, give me the weekend. I wanted to go and speak with my family and just see how that went. And I got home and I could not go to sleep. It's like
Oh,
1 in the morning and I can't go to sleep. And so finally, and I had to be back up at 6. And so it's like 3 in the morning. I remember saying, Lord, if this is something that you're permitting me to do, allow me to go to sleep. And if I go to sleep and I wake up and I feel good and refreshed and I got peace about it, I know that is you. Went to
wow.
sleep, woke up at 6 o'clock, felt like I slept for 8 hours, and I knew then, yeah.
That's incredible. Now, this is his sister, Shania Charleston, and this is along the same lines. She said, even though you were tapped for the city council seat, what then inspired you to run for mayor?
Miss Charleston, right? Wow. Now I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna sound the way, okay? Just rock with me. I've been on the city council by that time. I was in my second term, so I understood what was going on. I knew what was happening, and when I saw the people and heard the people who were slated to run, I just didn't feel good about any of the people running, because I didn't think that they would be able to hit the ground running. I knew that there would be a learning curve even for me, but at least I knew what the city was facing. So it was easy. It was a real easy decision. After I've been approached about it by several people, and so after maybe about three weeks, we made our decision after the mayor Shokwei Lumumba was buried.
Wow. That whole time was I was teaching at Jim Hill at the time. That was a crazy time in the city.
Yep.
Now this is London Lights, and I would say the hardest part would be having cameras in your face all the time. But she asked, "What is the hardest part about being the mayor of a city?"
Um, I I I was always a good guy. Um, I was, people liked me, and I was used to that. And I woke up mayor one day, and I had like this long list of enemies that I didn't even know that I had. I literally woke up mayor with enemies, and
Wow.
it's hard when you're learning who they are. This at the same time, either dodging or being hit by any of their varied assaults, and so it was just different. It was really different and hard.
Yeah, on top of then you got to have the camera in your face asking you about it, and you got to still be professional. And
You
that's
gotta still be
that's one more
professional.
thing I wanted to hit. I know we're almost out of time, but I just wanted to hit on that before I have one last question. But one thing we've heard from several professionals is that this generation of all genders and all races, the biggest problem is that they don't have the communication skills. They're always on the TikTok and the Snapchat and all that stuff and texting, but they are very uncomfortable when it comes to speaking like me and you are doing right now. Now, obviously, I've got a lot of experience speaking, and you do too, and it's worked well for us. But why do these young people need to focus so much on that when it comes to communication?
Um, there's a lot of conversation about Kanye West right now and whether he's a genius and all those things. And I'm not going to qualify that or disqualify that, but what I use that to say that the person who can communicate um, the best ideas
Yep.
in the simplest ways
Yep.
wins.
Yep.
Okay. And communicating isn't always just about talking because anybody can talk. Communication is about leaning into who you are.
Yep.
You can tell when you're talking to people who are really okay with themselves and they're really okay with who they are. So I'm going to challenge you guys to really lean into becoming comfortable, okay with who God created you to be, and while doing that, allow that confidence, that comes from you leaning into that to give you the audacity to be a communicator, somebody who can take complex things, say them simply, so that anybody who hears it can run with it.
Absolutely. Because, your crowd is not always going to be your friends.
That's
And
right.
any type of business, it needs to be as, I don't want to say dumbed down, but as simple as possible for anybody to understand, whether you're fixing a car or doing hair. You got to be able to conduct business professionally.
But see, a good communicator is first a good listener,
Yep.
because you brought up that business piece. That one of the 48 laws of power talks about knowing what it is that interest. What are the self interest of the person or the things that you're attempting to get to or do? So how do I do that? How do I know what you're interested in? How do I know what you like? I listen.
Yep.
And after I listen, I can then, or how do I know what the problem is? I listen. And because I listen, then I can now communicate a solution.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate someone of your stature and with your schedule making the time for our young people. But before we go, I always like to ask, you grew up right here in the same metro area, facing in the same stuff, same people, same environment as a lot of the young people that are watching with me now live and that are going to see this later. But yet you became the mayor of the largest city in the state and have just done so many things, business owner of multiple businesses, consulting, just a lot that you've accomplished, despite the same obstacles that our young black kids are going to face. So what can they do now to prepare to be able to be as successful as someone like you?
You got a choice. You can be the sample or you can be the example.
Wow.
It's easy to be the sample, and that you can be the sample. You can be the choice that gets barely dealt with and thrown away when you're done, or you can be the standard bearer. You can set the standard. You can be the first to change in the community, in your family, in your church, whatever the case may be. Be the example. Don't be the sample, but the choice is yours.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Great stuff for us. Again, Pastor Tony Yarber, former mayor of the city of Jackson. We thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations. Enjoy getting married tomorrow.
Thank you, man.
All right. I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
All right, y'all. Be safe. Thank you again.
See ya.